Hi, everybody. I'm Gus Denhard, Early Music Seattle's Executive Director, and I am here tonight with Rachel Ellen Wong. And David, could you pronounce your last name for me so I have it right?
Belkovski.
David Belkovski, violin and harpsichord for a concert that Early Music Seattle is presenting tomorrow at Trinity Parish Church at 7 p.m. That's Thursday at 7 p.m. You can come to the door for tickets, or you can buy tickets on our website. And we will be plugging this concert throughout this conversation here tonight. And it's so wonderful to have you two here. I know you're in the middle of rehearsal for this program at the home of one of our supporters this week. And so we're excited about that the concert's being prepared right here in town, and that we have this opportunity to talk to you. And so, Rachel, I just thought I would start with you, and you're from the Seattle, greater Seattle area, Linwood, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how got started as a musician here in Seattle. Like, what were your influences and what got you going?
Um, yeah, I it was definitely my parents. They're both artists, like singing and dancing and painting art, like visual art. So I guess they decided. Well, actually, my dad decided I was going to play specifically violin because I guess when he was at Caltech for his undergrad, he like started taking violin and he felt like he was too old or something, and so I guess he thought I would play. So I started when I was 6, and I had a really wonderful teacher in Mukilteo, Joyce Bovey. And when I was 8, she said I needed to go study with this teacher who was like Washington's like the best teacher in Washington, Kent Coleman.
Mhm.
And so I auditioned for him, and I studied with him until I was 15 when he unfortunately passed away. And then Simon James of the Seattle Symphony took over.
Mhm.
So yeah, I never thought I wanted to play violin growing up, and it wasn't really until I got to undergrad that I was like, oh, I'm going to college for this. So I actually like playing violin. I like performing. So I kind of think that's when I was kind of had a wake up call, like, oh, I'm really lucky that I like doing what I'm good at.
Oh, wonderful. Did you participate in some of the local ensembles, training ensembles, and orchestras and whatnot?
Yeah. So I was the youngest concertmaster for Everett Youth Symphony when I was 11. And I also did Academy Chamber Orchestra. Um, I wasn't. I never wanted to do Seattle Youth Symphony because I had soccer on Saturday, and so soccer was definitely way more important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Soccer is still pretty darn important, even now.
Yeah.
Well, then, so then I gathered from your reading your materials that you traveled around a lot before you ended up focusing on early music specifically. Like, what what happened after you left Seattle?
Well, I went to undergrad in Austin, Texas, University of Texas, Austin, which was great. It was just a really great school for me, and they actually had a early music program, or not, sorry, early music like once a week.
Mhm.
Um, and the teacher who introduced it to me, he was really patient and just like would let me use my shoulder rest on my violin because it was so new to me, and it was such a great opening for this whole new world. And like I wasn't like taking it seriously or anything. It was just something really fun. And when I went on to Indiana University for my master's, I heard that I needed to take like secondary Baroque violin with the teacher there, who's Stanley Ritchie.
Mhm.
And I had heard about Stanley Ritchie actually a lot because I was in a baby quartet with and our coach was Irv Eisenberg, and that name don't know if you know, but he was in the Philadelphia Quartet, and Stanley was also in it, like back in the 70s when they were at University of Washington as the quartet in residence. So yeah, so I'd always heard about him, and so I was like, well, I should just try this out. And after my first lesson, I just remember thinking like, whoa, this is something I really want to do. And Stanley was a huge influence, and just like he just made like he just to have I always felt like very dissatisfied when I played like Bach on the modern violin and how it was being taught to me, and when I started taking with Stanley, it was just like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. So.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, David, can we hear a little bit about your beginnings and how you developed and some of your early influences? I was reading that Balkan folk music was a passion in your earlier days, and yeah, can you start at the beginning?
Of course, yeah. I immigrated with my family at a young age. My dad preempted, sort of felt out America before we came over, but I'm from North Macedonia originally, and he came with the assumption that most of his work was going to be as a musician, because he had actually quite a prominent band. I just found out he has, a video with over 1 million views on YouTube. I just found this out like yesterday, which was bewildering. It's my dad. How do I not know this? But it's one of his, early songs from the early 90s. And so he had quite a connection to what was in his time Yugoslavia, and then the diaspora in the States. So then when he came over here, Metro Detroit seemed to be a hub for especially Macedonians. And we were able to find our community here, or outside of Detroit. And then when I came, it was a no-brainer that I would be playing that kind of music. It wasn't obvious that it was going to be piano originally. I played some saxophone, played a lot of percussion instruments that were familiar to the Balkans. So tarabuka, tupan, a lot of still often played sort of family instruments that everyone has one around their house. They're used in mostly things like weddings and parties, and it's a very social experience that you don't go to necessarily a concert of the kind of music that was often played by my dad's band, and I would join and I would play throughout the summers. So that was a deep influence. In fact, I got a great spot in my high school band as a saxophonist middle school band, because of my training over the summers with these fantastic instrumentalists that my dad would hire to play with them. So it was a lot of really beautiful training, and obviously opened the door to things like improvisation and a lot of commonalities with the Baroque that I'm still exploring today. I have probably a lot to thank. My ear probably has a lot to thank, and especially because now I'm trying to figure out ways to incorporate that. We were actually talking about using one of my drums in a concert that my dad let me borrow. So yeah, we'll figure out how this continues to influence us and me to this day. But yeah, that was basically the beginning. I also studied some jazz. My first proper classical teacher might have been around the age of 15. And then Interlaken was the big, I don't know if Interlaken is nationally well known, but it's a northern Michigan outside of Traverse City, beautiful boarding school and hub for the arts. And my mentor there, TJ Livenstall, was instrumental to my development. I ended up similarly, it was around that time where I figured out, this is a career path. Just before my undergrad in this case. But early music was not a feature I ended up at Eastman University outside of Rochester, in Rochester, New York. And in my last 2 years, I was preparing a Mozart concerto and digging around some forte piano recordings. I think I must have stolen every ornament, stolen every tempo. I was just deeply inspired by Malcolm Bilson, Chris Pizzadin, and all these forte pianists. And yeah, that was probably a big milestone. Happened to also, I attribute stealing all those things to winning the concerto competition with those. So yeah, it was a good reason to keep going. Yeah, in that vein, I was also introduced to the harpsichord around that time. And yeah, this is pretty much the cliff notes of why I'm doing early music.
Yeah. I'm so inspired to hear about how oral tradition music influences and infiltrates classical approach. Personally, I think it is like one of the sparks that can reignite the music that we've been playing, and in some ways capturing, at some times capturing it in a sort of a museum approach. So pushing back on that is a very good thing, I believe. What about this ensemble? How did you two cross paths? And your ensemble, Twelfth Night. What does that mean? And who is Twelfth Night? And can you fill us in?
Yeah. Well, we both overlapped. So after I did my master's, I went to New York, and then I went to Juilliard for the historical performance program. And it's a 2-year master's. And so my second year, that's when David came. So we met at school and we started playing together. And I was like, wow, it's hard. It's really rare for me to find someone that I truly feel like we're on the same wavelength when we're playing music. Or like, you do something and they just respond, and they'll do something and you can respond. It feels like really natural and comfortable. And that happened like immediately for me when I started playing with David. And also like he was into later repertoire, past the Baroque in a historically informed way, which I've always been really interested in. So we also bonded over like playing like Beethoven and Mozart and later stuff together. So yeah, that's how we started playing together. And then I graduated in 2019 in May, and like soon after Dave was like, we should start a group. And so like we started like brainstorming, and it was going like we were getting momentum, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And so we're like
planning momentum. We hadn't done our first concert.
No, we hadn't done a concert, but we were planning. Yeah.
It's really like to be so fortunate as to debut a new ensemble during the pandemic. And yeah, it was the man, there was a lot of uncertainty behind even getting people in a room. We have a lot of people to thank for it. I mean, the presenting organization in New York, GEMS, the Gotham Early Music Scene, they kept these concerts going throughout the pandemic, and we were very, very glad that they did. Otherwise, I'm not sure that we had a platform. So yeah, in June, after all of this thinking and hoping, it came to pass.
Yeah.
I mean, Twelfth Night is basically it's meant to be inherently flexible. I mean, we're technically the co-founders, but this can turn into an opera at some point. This can be a massive oratorio, or it can be a small chamber ensemble. The important thing for us is, and I think the pandemic really solidified this, is that you need to build in flexibility into the ensemble, because you just never know what restrictions you're going to have, both in terms of what presenting organizations, some practical ones. Presenting organizations may not want big ensembles, and then for yourself artistically, you may want to explore meatier repertoire with a large ensemble, and then the next day a little trio sonata. But at the same time, you want to continue to build culture and chemistry. So instead of having disparate projects under the umbrella of 12th Night, I think we can really explore cohesion and still satisfy a unified artistic goal. I think for both of us, it was especially important that the process is healthy, so that everyone has their favorite experiences as a musician, and it's usually what happens leading up to the concert. So we're hoping that we can also build a culture around the ensemble where people want to play and feel inspired to not just chime into rehearsal, but chime in during the performance, play in ways that surprise themselves and us. And I think that only happens behind the scenes. I think it only happens in the days leading up. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to ensemble building. But
you want to talk about the name?
Yeah, 12th Night. I mean, it actually very circuitously got to 12th Night, but I'm a big old Shakespeare nut, and it started off actually as Dioscuri. So you might run into an original iteration. I mean, this is all within the last year or so. But I also love Greek myth, so I was thinking of ways to incorporate something along those lines. Long story short, it had to change. We changed it to 12th Night. I think it gives us the added element of historical music making, because 12th Night is one of the most densely, I guess, wrought plays with musical inflection and reference. I mean, we all know If Music Be the Food of Love, Play On It. There's a lot more than that. In fact, Tobias Hume might be one of the characters of 12th Night. Tobias Hume, the famous gamba performer, might have actually made his way into the character list of 12th Night. So there's just a lot to explore there, and hopefully this finds its way into productions of English theater music that we put on, and yeah,
Wonderful.
Large goals.
Yeah, exciting, and what was that first performance? What did you play on the Gems series?
Yeah, we played a Telemann. What was it called?
Yeah, very little known sonata. We did a sort of what we hope the ensemble would be. We played a Telemann sonata from when he would sign his Italian music as Giorgio Melante. Melante is just an what is it called? Oh my gosh. Anagram. Thank you. An anagram of Telemann. So Georg Telemann, Giorgio Melante. And then we did a motet by Vivaldi with a beautiful soprano, Jessica Niles.
And then we did the Vivaldi. I played a Vivaldi violin concerto.
Oh yeah, and very I didn't think I've heard it once on a record, maybe. And
it's such a good concerto.
Yeah.
So I hope
yeah, we'll definitely play that one again. And then we wrapped it up with the Mufa Pasakai. But there's a dramatic arc that I think we, in the course of a pandemic, we tried to show this immersion from darkness into light. So the music got progressively less intensely, I guess dark is the only way to put it. It was
like the Mufat is just such a joyous, celebratory piece, and everybody loves it. And
the Mufat Chaconus for the final, it's the Propitious Adere, the final concerto grosso, last movement.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's exciting to be launching a new endeavor, and you're kind of as you develop your duo, I guess you're kind of developing the sort of the proto culture of your group.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I totally get that. That seems like a wonderful way to use the pandemic time. And this particular program, Rachell, where is it? Where are you taking it in the following week or so?
Oh, we're gonna go to the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and perform it there. and we will be performing it, at least we know, again in Arizona in a year at least. Yeah. So yeah.
Are you part of the San Francisco Early Music Society's series?
No.
Nope.
Just
Different.
yeah.
Okay, good. And people can read about it on your website, right? Like if they want to follow where you're performing. I noticed that your website seems up to date with all of your events, so that's great.
Yeah.
Hey, well, let's turn to the program for a second. And as we were talking before the interview, I was glancing at the program, and I noticed that the program titled Diverse Bizarre is associated with one of the pieces that you're playing. And then, David, you mentioned that it was a good description of a program that goes in like a couple of different directions, or maybe even many directions. Like, what are some of the directions that you're going in on Thursday?
I mean, a lot of the pieces are certainly familiar to Baroque aficionados. I think there isn't too many surprises. The final piece was titled by Matisse, who was an Italian expat living in London in the late 17th century, and it's called Diverse Bizzarie, over the old saraband or even the chaconne. So it's effectively variations over chaconne, but Diverse Bizzarie means several oddities, or a collection of oddities. And I think with the way the program is compiled, it can feel like an unrelated bunch of pieces. And it's one way to program sometimes is to have a dramatic arc and then find thematic material from that. And that's kind of what we were aiming to do. In another way, the Italian title also points to the fact that there is nobody on this program except for Bach who didn't make their way to Italy or wasn't Italian themselves. And Bach, we know, was deeply influenced by Italy. He discovered the Vivaldi concerti while he was in Weimar, and there was plenty of Italian music to go around, whichever city he happened to be working in. So even the sonata that we chose by Bach has very Italian features, but the Leclerc studied in Turin. Hoyer, who was a younger contemporary of Leclerc, was born in Turin. He's actually Italian himself. Matisse was Italian. Corelli's Italian. Castella's Italian. So Bach is Pisendel is a best friend of all the German composers, but also studied with Vivaldi. So he'd spent a lot of time Italianifying himself. There's a lot more cohesion to the program than might be obvious at first glance, even though it spans 150 years of music or so. And in addition to that, I mean, there's, from the Castello, you get the sense that this is very cosmopolitan music. Even from the Castello, it was one of the most often republished books, his collection of violin or soprano music sonatas. The one we selected is one of the only solo ones available.
And I think it's really also interesting just to see, because there is such a big span, just to see how the sonata develops from like the Castello into the Pisendel.
Yeah.
Like it's very, I think it's really cool.
No, I just learned that the Pisendel is actually a concerto.
Oh yeah. This sonata is like he wrote as a concerto.
And so reduced it here for
no, he wrote it as a sonata, and it was like you'll like when you hear it, you're like, wow, this is definitely like a concerto. This is not a sonata.
Yeah, it was super. It was an interesting challenge as a continuo player, having to basically build. Before I knew it was a concerto, I tried to build it up as much as possible because I could tell that the scope of the piece was not that of a sonata. There was people will hear a couple of giant cadenzas, but in addition to that, there's like an expanse that you don't usually find, and sometimes that comes with like the virtuosity in the upper part that I'm trying to hopefully match, even though I have a much simpler bass line. But no, it's really interesting to see how individual composers took the idea of a keyboard instrument or a continuo instrument and a treble line, and came to very different conclusions.
You know, we're trying to talk about something that's so difficult to express, and you're using language that, for me, conjures up some of the variation that that might be that a listener might hear at this program. But I'm wondering if we could get like an actual demonstration of some aspects of it that you could just point out as, you know, like, listen for this. So if we're talking about early 17th century Costello, and if you wanted to tell your audience, listen for this, what would they be listening for? Could you show us something on an instrument that
I'd be giving a lot away to play the very end of it, which has all the fantastical stuff. Yeah.
Well, just play the end.
Yeah, why not? Maybe from the G minor bit.
Oh, hold on.
Sorry, I didn't arrange a harpsichord for this. I mean, this would have been actually kind of fun to do a pre-show.
Thankfully, this final bit is a pedal G, so it's one note.
Just imagine.
Yeah, everyone can imagine.
Imagine a G.
Yeah, this is this, I think, demonstrates a lot of the flavor of this music, I think.
Right.
This was the, you know, proto Stilus Fantasticus, the Germanic, like, it very, I mean, clearly influenced by traditions that were in the streets of Venice and just outside, I mean, in the village. Like, I just think this is incredibly visceral music.
Can you give us something in contrast to that, and describe what would be different about the composer's intent or the construction? Oh, and one more thing. Can you switch your computer to original sound if it isn't already on? We're getting just a little bit of that dropout that we sometimes get from Zoom. On
Because it's
mine,
an iPad, I mean, there should still be a function.
it's like in the upper left, in the upper left-hand corner. Do you have anything for original sound?
I think because we're on an iPad,
on
it has a different.
It's not a big deal.
Let's see.
Yes. Hey, maybe the woman behind the curtain, Amy, if you could just be sure the webinar is producing original sound, that might do it. Hey, well, so can you what else can you play for us? So that what we basically heard was just like a big old G major, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like a big extension.
So in contrast, this Leclerc, do you want to show the opening of this one?
Yeah.
So this is just incredibly, almost aristocratic French music that, yeah, I mean, so you get much more grace and elegance rather than the fire and fury of the Costello.
Okay.
How's the sound?
That's better. Yep.
I mean, it's very different.
Yes.
Already, I mean, this was about 100 years. I wouldn't say 100 years, maybe. Nope, it's about 100 years later. Yeah, if Costello was in the 1620s, Leclerc would have been in the 1720s or 30s publishing this.
So you know, like to my ear, it's, you know, like tuneful, not particularly serious, or at least lighter in character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much lighter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you contrast that with something else?
Well,
What's
the
another-
Corelli, I think what's really interesting, especially I mean, if you've never heard a Corelli sonata or any like Italian composer from around that time, it's like if you see the music, like it just looks so bare. Like it looks like, you know, beginning first position Suzuki Book 1 music. And what's just so fun about it is that you add everything into it. You know, the Italian were big on flourishes and ornaments and just everything. So like the beginning of like this fourth movement, it just, what's written on the page is it's like really simple. Or so you could, you know, you just make up stuff.
Yes, yes.
It's fun.
I do remember that as a Stanley Ritchie thing.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
able to,
This was actually the first Corelli sonata I ever studied. So
yeah,
I'm excited to play it.
to be able to sort of fill in a melody. Hey, tell us about Niccolo Matteus. He was an Italian that ended up in England. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. He quickly made his fame as a violinist. As a composer, it's really, it's clear he's not the strongest technical composer. There's not in terms of technique, but because there are some quite challenging pieces for the violin, but you know, he'll have some flying parallel fifths and odd harmonies that don't really feel deliberate, but there's so much natural outpouring of musicality when you play his stuff. It doesn't feel it's kind of refreshing for something to not feel so calculated, where we can get really used to our Bachs and our Mozarts.
Yeah.
But he I believe he had some fallings out. I think he had the not great etiquette of an Italian, maybe a little louder than your typical Englishman. So there are definitely some stories of him stepping on toes. But as a player, he was considered second to none.
Mm, wow. Okay. Yes. Um, good. Well, so if you just had to sum up an idea for, and and by the way, I hope you feel very comfortable talking at the performance, and you know, like, feel free to address the audience and get them involved and even ask
Absolutely.
questions if you want to.
Yeah, we totally talk.
This is something,
I
yeah.
think talk is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do that, do you like plan what you're going to say? How do you decide what you're going to talk about and what not, or is it kind of improvised?
You know, just like having had to talk a lot, especially at the beginning, like when I was younger, when I really didn't want to talk, I found that like planning out what I was gonna say actually hurts me. Like it always like confuses me, because if I forget some like one word, like suddenly I'm like, I don't know where I am. And so it's gotten to the point, like I like it now. I think it really enhances a performance, and it makes every, you know, like you want to get people involved. And so I think just kind of very general sense of what you're going to talk about. And I think just going off of that is just much more genuine. And
Mhm.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like the Corelli movement that that Rachel was highlighting. Yeah, you have your points of reference, but there's no reason to write out a speech or anything like that. I guess it depends. There are contexts in which you may not want conversation if like there's some kind of visual experience or immersive experience, but I think in a typical concert, the audience only stands to gain, and the performers stand to gain. The fourth wall is broken, and immediately you dissolve tension. So
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Have you ever been in a situation where in the middle of a concert, comments like that actually turned into like a conversation with somebody in the audience, or like someone felt comfortable enough to actually ask a question? Have you ever seen that?
The only thing, like, I would point out humorous things in the music before we played a certain piece, and I think something like that is like, oh, when they hear it, suddenly like there's like lots of laughter, and I love that because they're recognizing these things, and maybe if I hadn't pointed out, I mean, I if I didn't know it, I probably wouldn't like laugh either. I didn't.
Right.
So that's one way, but never like a question.
I think partly it's a cultural thing where you just haven't you have to engender these habits, and if people don't feel like there's precedent, we still shush people for coughing. I mean, like,
Right.
yeah, people cough, people will laugh, people hopefully I want people to have visceral gut reactions to the music making, and if that happens to elicit sound. If we're recording, we'll tell maybe people to clear their throats before the next piece, but even then I think it adds the human element. I don't want dead space in a performance. I want to feel the buzz of people actively listening.
Yeah, that's an inspiring idea. I would, I think it would be wonderful for concerts, and sometimes I think we use the wrong language to describe that vibe, where we say, oh, it's informal. Well, it's really not. People are really there to hear wonderful music, but the whole relaxed attitude of it lets something else penetrate the evening. So yeah, do you have any more comments about that, about the culture of classical music and early music, and where you would personally like to see it go? David, you said a little bit just now, but is there more to say on that?
I want things to get more casual, I guess, casual, or like I want it to be more friendly for everyone, for anybody to come, because this music is so cool and so special, and I want to share it with as many people as possible, especially people who've never heard it before. And that's definitely, we've talked, like that's one of our goals, and like I love the fact that people do like play in a bar or play in these different settings that you wouldn't, you're not going to like a concert hall and you have to dress up really nice, and I don't know, I really like that it's turning. I love having regular traditional concerts too, but having it paired with, I don't know, it's nice.
It's tough. I mean, it's hard to say that it's necessary to have a place for tucks and tails anymore. It's hard to find the integral reason for that to be part of the experience. And I think in order to sustain a tradition that itself is anachronistic, because the music was never kept alive the way we do it today, that it feels like we're fighting ourselves a little bit by not listening to how younger people, for one example, enjoy taking in their music. And some of the time it is the way that we're dressed that dissuades them, that makes them feel like it's music that you can't approach as easily. And there's plenty of elements here from education. It's top down, it's funding, and we can talk about venues as much as we want, but it's hard to fit a Mullerian-sized orchestra in any place but a symphony hall. So like it might be that early music is the easier I guess vehicle for us moving forward, but even
I'd like to think that it could be. And
yeah.
And just while we're on the subject, can you talk about settings, venues, or other things that would go along with that to create this openness, that I won't use the word informal, but openness that you're looking for? Like what's an ideal venue, or what are some possible venues, or what are some other circumstances around a program?
I mean, I've been thinking about how music, even in that time, we will sit through a 3 hour opera today and assume that it's maybe we know that it's not how that they appreciated their music or how they listened, but it's how we did it in the early 20th century. But I think if the culture opens up a little bit, if we realize that in their time, a 6 hour evening of music also incorporated dinner and talking and laughter and friends and all of this, then it might change our appreciation of this craft and how we present our work to people. For example, it can feel very academic to prepare, a concert of one genre of music, where instead of picking your favorite pieces, picking something that you feel must be heard. Not everything needs to be heard necessarily. And if you like one movement of a sonata, is it really destroying the integrity of the work? They did it. They selected their favorite little tunes. As late as Liszt, they were plucking out their favorite movement of a Beethoven sonata and shoving it into a random part of the program, and then pairing it with an aria that a singer would jump in casually and sing. I mean, there are many ways to rethink programming that would allow people to. Why sometimes I wonder why end a piece with a minuet just because it's the last movement. It's a very flat ending, and maybe they liked it, but I want to end with like I want to end with a jig or a chaconne or something hearty. So
Some fireworks. Yeah.
exactly, they were flexible in their programming, and sometimes we see what's on the page and then we think we draw our line arbitrarily that I can't change the order, I can't omit this movement or that. And I think there's more room for that than.
Where do you think that inflexible thinking comes from? Like, how were we trained in, how was that trained into us?
I mean, it's just a typical. This is how you're taught music. Really, it's from.
Yeah, like with Bach, especially like I mentioned, like I felt like I was being taught how to play these Baroque pieces, like a late romantic violin concerto. We would be taught the same way, and it's like it's just so wrong. Like, it's so outdated, and still people think that's how it should be taught. And it's like, well, fine if you want to play it that way, but don't say this is how you play. This is how it was played. Like.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into that trap even in the early music world as well. Yeah, so it's not necessarily true that by virtue of studying early music you are somehow going to be more flexible. I think if you're inherently liberated by the tradition, you're going to have more fun responses. You're going to have more flexible responses. If you just happen to enjoy how the music sounds, but aren't necessarily liberated by the instruction. When I hear or read in a treatise or listen to a very early recording, a way that I wasn't used to doing something, it only opens 10 more doors, and I'm only more likely to knock things down. I think that you can easily have the opposite reaction, and you can say, oh, well, I found the way. That's the way to do it. And instead of saying, well, if that's possible, then these other 3 options might be possible.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's exciting. That's exciting. I think that's probably the future lies somewhere in that direction. And then, if the artists are thinking that way, then you just have to get the presenters and the audience on board. Whatever the barriers are there, they may be just as simple as venues or the way that you promote an event rather than as a serious tuxted event. But yeah, lots to think about there. And then, that's kind of in preparation for, you've already been discussing the question that I was going to ask next, which has something to do with, early music or classical music and the change that's in the air. There's a lot of change in the air. It's not all the justice movement. There's many other things coming to our lives right now, the pandemic, and I just heard this term today, that um, the Great Resignation. People are leaving their jobs because they're not satisfied, and they want to spend their lives a different way. So like all these ideas are in the air. How how are you? What are you going to take from that? We talked about it just now a little bit. But what do you take from that, and how might that motivate you? And if you could each answer, that would be great.
Well, one thing I've taken from the pandemic is getting to use social media to our advantage, because I think it can be a very powerful tool in many ways. And one thing I've really appreciated is being able to reach so many people that even non-musicians who don't know what classical music is, but you can reach them so easily in a little 30-minute video, 30-second video, and I think that's really heartening, because you're like, wow, gut strings, like, and then you can, like, even in like Game of Thrones, right? They had an early music band in one of the episodes. It's like, so people are like, wow, this is just like Game of Thrones, like, it's really cool. I think that's one way I found the pandemic has like opened my eyes in one way. And I mean, I don't know, but do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm sure that this could be
Yeah.
a full interview. And I think I especially in the front half of the pandemic, I don't know how long this is. This might be another 10 years, but knock on all pieces of wood. The beginning of the pandemic, I spent revisiting how I appreciated music. So I took the time to study improvisation and historical pedagogy in a deeper way than I had in the past, and I thought that basically challenged my idea of current pedagogy and allowed me to imagine a different way to listen and to educate young students. So I'm grateful to have had the time to do that, and then so in a way it was my great resignation from the typical route that a musician or a pedagogue takes. I'm hoping that moving forward, I stay. I don't get complacent, but I will always remember that it was nearly gone, and that it was a challenge to put together any kind of concert. I don't think it's necessarily. I think we're learning, and it'll be easier moving forward, hopefully. But in that same vein, I don't think we should forget what a lot of us had to give up, or in some cases currently are still grappling with. I'm very fortunate to get to make concerts, and not a lot of people have been so lucky, I think.
Yes, yes. Great. Well, thank you. I mean, this has been a wonderful conversation, and you've actually sparked some interest about where we could go. Um, uh, Rachell's going to Early Music Seattle's audience is going to be seeing more of Rachell. You may know that she's the concertmaster of our Seattle Baroque Orchestra, and your concerts will start in January. Fingers crossed that everything falls into place for that. So people in the audience can hear Rachell on a regular basis. And you also perform in Seattle with other ensembles and under other flags. So that's wonderful that you have a lot of activity here. And David, where can aside from this ensemble, where can we hear you, and where could we look to be able to follow your career?
I have a website as well, in addition to twelfthnightensemble.com. It's my name, davidbelkovski.com, and mostly I work in New York City, so unfortunately very far away. But I try to make regular uploads, and because the main focus, hopefully for the rest of my career, is this ensemble. We'll be doing as much as possible to keep a consistent online presence and make our way around the country as often as we can. So this won't be the last time. I think we'll be in Seattle soon.
Okay, I'm really counting on that. Okay, and any closing words or comments or anything?
I'm just really grateful to be here. Really grateful for EMS for the opportunity to play. This is
Yeah, we're really excited for tomorrow, and we've been having a lot of fun, like just finally getting to play.
yeah. Molly
and Molly,
Wagner's. Oh my gosh, her instrument is delightful. I cannot even believe how easy it is to put together this repertoire. I mean, it's a wide variety of composers, and the instrument seems suited for every corner
everything.
of it. Yeah,
It's so beautiful. It looks beautiful, and she's amazing, and she is an amazing cook too. Like she's been making us lunch, and it's been so.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we've talked to her. She loves having you there. Yeah. Yeah, that instrument is also a favorite of Alex Vyman's. It's in most of our concerts.
wow.
And it was it was I think built or rebuilt by David Calhoun, who's a local harpsichord guru. And
Wow.
then Molly probably told you she did most of the painting herself, or she commissioned and
Yeah.
did some of the painting herself of the
Yeah.
instrument. Yeah, you can
Yes.
ask her about that.
Yeah, there's a beautiful, which people can see tomorrow. There's a beautiful Chinese Trompe l'oeil painting inside on the lid of the harpsichord. And it's just something you rarely see. It's actually a painting she has in her house. So it was nice to see the original.
Yeah.
Cool. That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, great. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Really.
And hopefully people who are listening will follow us down to Trinity Parish Church Thursday, 7 p.m. And we will get to hear these wonderful musicians. So thank you so much, and looking to seeing and hearing more.
Thank you so much,
Yay,
Gus.
thank you,
Thank you for
Gus.
having us.
Good night, everybody.